Greetings, everyone. Welcome, everyone, to tonight's Spring Rights Literary Festival event. It is From Page to Stage, and thank you so much for being here. I am Robin Schwartz. I'm the Program and Grant Director of the Community Arts Partnership of Tompkins County, and we serve Ithaca, New York in Tompkins County. And the Spring Rights Literary Festival is one of our 6 annual events. We also have the Greater Ithaca Art Trail and Ithaca Artist Market and the Vintage Art Sale, Spring Rights, and 2 others. And we also have 6 grant programs for Tompkins County artists and not-for-profits doing arts events. We have one coming up really soon called the Creative Recovery Fund, and it is due on June 22nd. And I invite people to look at our grants page. I will put our URL, artspartner.org, into the chat when I'm finished. And then I would also put the springrights.org link in the chat. Almost all the events are done. We have one more workshop. I think it's at the end of June. I forget the date, but it's Writing from the Body by Brenda Fitzgerald. And it has been traditionally one of the best, most wellest attended events that we've had. So I encourage you to look at Writing from the Body. I see that it is Sunday, June 26th, and it is on Zoom. We also taped a lot of events, so you could go to springrights.org and watch the tapes. So some housekeeping, please stay on mute. Please use the chat heavily for questions and comments. It's the way that we will see engagement in a Zoom event like this one. And Priscilla will probably talk about asking questions, and we'll be monitoring the chat, so that would be awesome. And by the way, if you're out of Tompkins County, tell us where you're from in the chat, because that's always really fun to see. Bathrooms are down the hall. Okay, who's tired of that joke? Who's been to like 20 events and is like, I can't believe she keeps saying that. I am going to send everyone, you may have actually already received it, a Spring Rights Google survey. If you can fill it out, that would be amazing, because they'll be asking you how you heard about Spring Rights, and that really helps us not spend money where it's not being noticed. And then we could have more money for the artists. So that will happen when the, oh, I already sent it. I sent it a couple days ago, and I think I did include the people who had registered for this. So please fill that out. We also put in an incentive in there of 3 $25 checks. And lastly, I just want to thank our wonderful Spring Rights sponsors. They are Ithaca College, Wegmans, M&T Bank, CFCU, Community Credit Union, the Odyssey Bookstore, and the Ithaca Marriott. We receive grant support from New York State Council on the Arts, Poets and Writers, and Tompkins County Tourism. And our media sponsors are Ithaca Voice, WITH Radio, and WSKG. And that's it for me. I am going, I will tell you the name of the grant, Natasha, in the chat. And now I'm going to turn this over to Priscilla Hummel.
Thank you so much, Robin, and thank you to you and to everybody at CAP for having us here with Spring Rights. So again, I'm Priscilla Hummel, and I'm the founder and producing artistic director of WOW, Walking on Water Productions. We are a Tompkins County-based musical theater company that collaborates with local theater artists and serves multi-generational audiences through both new as well as existing works of musical theater. So welcome to our From Page to Stage workshop here. I am joined by my fabulous colleagues who I will list off by name, and you can see them up at the top. We have, in my order from left to right, Benjamin Stevens, local music director, Jaime Warburton, local actor and dramaturg, Anna Marcus-Hecht, composer, Carley Robinson, teaching artist and actor. And then we also have Shirley Serotsky, the artistic director at Hangar Theater. And then who we also have, who is going to be joining us through a virtual recording at the end of this workshop, Saviana Stanescu, local playwright and professor. We also have our wonderful intern, Gracie Gallagher, joining us tonight as well. So thank you all. So we've got 4 different categories for this workshop. After each of the categories, we're going to allow a couple of minutes to see if any of our other panelists want to pop in and add some thoughts. If there are no thoughts from the panelists, we'll go ahead and see if there's any applicable questions from those of you who are participating with us. Otherwise, feel free to keep those questions rolling because we will have about 10 minutes at the end of tonight's workshop to go ahead and do a little bit of Q&A. So our workshop categories that we have up first, we have our from table read to stage readings, collaborating with directors, music directors, and actors. So I'll have our first couple of panelists take it away, Jamie and Ben.
Do you want to stay on the screen, Priscilla, with them?
I don't need to be, that's okay.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. Just before Ben and I get going in here, I would love to ask how many of you who are attending today, if you are on camera, go ahead and raise your hand. If you are not on camera, go ahead and use the chat. How many of you are here because you have written or you are interested in writing a play, a one act, or a musical? How many of you have written or are interested? And Deborah, you are. Robert, Emily, Judith, oh my gosh, wonderful. I'm so excited to see that. I would love, as we go through, at least while Ben and I are talking, writing now, love that. And we're going to start off with this concept about collaborating. We really welcome all of you to put your questions in the chat. We're going to have an actual Q&A section towards the end. But while we are speaking in each one of these sections, please, if there is something that you know would be useful to you and your process, curiosities about next steps, how things go, whatever, please go ahead and use the chat so that we can make sure that we respond to that and interact with you as well. And so we're going to start off with this first idea about collaboration, and I'm going to make reference to one of the words in my name on the screen, and then I'm going to shut my mouth so Ben can talk, and Ben loves it when I shut my mouth, except when I'm singing, when I should open it wider. But generally speaking, you might see that there is one word in my name after drama, after actor, it's dramaturg, and it doesn't just mean drama queen, although I'm sure there's a little bit of that too. But a dramaturg is somebody who works closely with playwrights and/or directors and production teams to help create the whole world and universe of the play, really to keep things consistent. If there is research that needs to be done to make sure that we're being true to the person or the demographics of a character, if we have a historical piece, if we are talking about additional many performances of a play in which there have been many productions and we need to see what happens in accordance to the playwright's desires. We're going to get the opportunity to talk about in collaboration what you can do to get your work fully realized without having to think about every single thing all the time. So that's what that word means. And if we have other questions about that, I'll be happy to take them. Ben, go for it. What are some of these important things that you've discovered about collaboration and taking something from the page to table reading and beyond?
Yeah, so one of the things that I find challenging both in myself and in the people that I've worked with as actors and musicians is that it's very easy to fall into previous renditions of characters. I often struggle with, if I'm working on a piece that has been seen a lot of times or has been around for 50 years, there's a lot of character that already exists, and it can sometimes be difficult to find a new and unique performance in it. But one of the things that I have enjoyed the most about working on new pieces is that I get to be a part of creating the character from scratch. I've really enjoyed having no existing version of the character to work from. There's no recording to copy. There is no performance quirks to emulate. it's creating a brand new expression of the character. In these new works that I've been a part of, that has been, I think, the most exciting thing that I've been able to do. I worked on a production of She Loves Me a few months ago, and that show has been around for almost 60 years, almost 70 years actually. And so it was very easy to just do what the previous Broadway performances have done, especially because I was working with high schoolers. So it was very easy to fall back to patterns of the 2007 revival or the 1993 revival or the original. But when working on new works, it's been really artistically rewarding to me to get to find out what the characters and songs are like anew, and to do that in collaboration with the artistic team and with the people performing those roles.
I'm thinking, Ben, about some of the importance when we talk about collaboration of interpretation and translation, right? And I asked in the chat too, if anybody was working on something that was an adaptation of something that they'd written as a story or another person's novel. There's so many different steps in taking the concept and then putting it into another genre, right? When it comes to the actors or singers perspective, as Ben is saying, getting to originate a role is huge, but it can also be really scary for the playwright. Right? It can be really scary for the playwright because you've created this whole world and all of these characters, and then here comes another body into the room, right? Who's going to have a lot of kind of interpretation, is going to be responsible for translating your work. And in this table read kind of process, that's a great moment. Like, why do it, right? Like, why do a table read? Why bring all these other people in? You can read a piece of paper yourself, but it can give us a great opportunity as writers to hear and see and feel what your concept is like in another person's body. Right. And we have the opportunity to give and receive feedback on both sides there. I like to think about this stage in the writing process as when everything is a fluid. The piece has not yet been frozen. You know how you pour water into an ice cube tray, you freeze it, it comes out, that's the shape that it is. But right now we're still kind of in motion, and there's an opportunity for a lot of back and forth. So Roger's mentioning that he's working on a historical piece involving personages from the showbiz and music worlds of the past, a musical, but adapted from nonfiction and documentary. Roger, that's a great opportunity to get yourself involved with sometimes local historical societies, but also definitely dramaturgs who will have a lot of experience with doing the side work that has to get done so that you can honor the adaptation and the historical perspective as much as you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to have some turging.
Yeah, definitely. So I hope that maybe you'll be able to join in our Q&A at the end too, and give us a little more about what that's like. Priscilla's just given us a little bit of a timing warning. Ben, other things you'd like to say about collaboration at this point?
I really enjoy that question of why do a reading? Because I think there are a lot of really important answers, one of which is it's a really important part of the creation process to not be the only person working on it anymore, to no longer hold on to a piece that you've created and let it breathe outside of you. I also think that it is a profound exercise in trust and generosity to do that, to just trust that other people that you hand your work to will put themselves in it and will be generous themselves. And so I encourage anyone creating art like this, a theater piece, written works, that generosity and vulnerability and trust of giving that work to other people to interact with, to start that collaboration process, is just about the coolest thing you can do with art.
Absolutely. I love that. I just wrote your words in the chat, Ben, because I had to reiterate them. A profound exercise in generosity and trust. Like, what more could we ask for? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamie and Ben. Some really insightful things that you both shared. And thank you too for those that popped in as well. Judith, I love your statement that you have to hear the actors reading the words in order to know if they work. 100%. I know we can all, I'm seeing lots of head nods all over the Zoom room right now. We all agree with that for sure. That's such a powerful part of the process. So we're going to actually go ahead and jump onto our next category, which is going to be from workshopping to world premiere. So Shirley and Carley are going to take it away on this next phase.
Yeah, I'll start. And Carley and I didn't like pre-plan this, so I guess if folks have specific things they want to hear about, I'm happy to respond to that as well. You know, this is, if we're looking at this as kind of the journey of a piece, I guess the big question that probably writers primarily have is, how do we get from workshop to world premiere? And I may disappoint everyone right now by saying there is no clear answer to that. There is no one path. There is every journey that a play or musical has taken to get from, you know, from that workshop phase to a full production on stage is likely to be totally different. I can certainly speak to the experiences I've had. I've been making theater now for over 20 years, and a lot of that work has been in new play development, primarily in the DC area, where I lived before I came to Ithaca. And a lot of that work happened through specific programs that theaters had with the specific intention of finding new work, developing new work through sometimes multiple workshops, and then saying, if it was at a specific theater, we're going to program that show for a year from now or 2 years from now. I can throw out some words and definitions just to sort of help explain what some of the like words that you will hear around this process. The word commission comes up. I guess who wants to tell me what a commission is? I'm sure many people have heard these words. Some people have probably had commissions themselves. So someone out in the crowd, tell me what a commission is, or your understanding of a commission. Anyone ever been commissioned to write a piece?
Somebody pays you to do artwork.
There you go. So I
you do
guess
it.
visual arts as well, right?
Yeah.
So plays and musicals as well. You know, that's kind of the world you want to get to, where you have you know, theaters that are paying you before you've even written the play. That is a commission, and often it'll be subject specific. Frankly, sometimes playwrights, I think it becomes super stressful because, you know, they end up knowing they have to write a play about a specific thing, and that doesn't always help with inspiration, as many of the writers in this group can probably understand. But, you know, the commission route is the sure way to, you're being committed to, you're being contracted from the beginning to write a play. The world where there's a series like what Priscilla is doing with Walking on Water, where there is a submission process, and you know, that's also often a workshop process, will be through a series of possible submissions, and that can be very specific based on whatever organization is doing it, what the application is, and that too can sometimes hold a commitment to say, we are going to workshop this project and we are going to program the full production, you know, in the next season. Often even doing the workshop, you do actually get something in a contract that says this theater holds now the exclusive, you know, right to first refusal for this project for the next, you know, 3 months to 2 years. So those are some of the routes from workshop to full production. I want to give Carley a chance to talk as well. And I'll as Carley's talking, I'll look at some of the questions.
Yeah, I mean, I am much less versed in the route to world premiere, but I'm just thinking about some of the questions in the chat about kind of this reworking of things as things go along in scripts. And I'm thinking about some of the shows that we have programmed at the Hangar this summer. So we were in rehearsal for Schoolgirls and we were reading through it. And I think Shirley, you were the one who mentioned this, of like, there's a section where there is fewer characters on stage, and like, is that time for a costume change? Like that kind of thing is something that you find out in production. You're not going to find that out in a workshop, that we need time to change our costumes, so we need something to fill that space. Or Natasha Pierre, you know, that had a full production before it went to Broadway. And you can hear the original production and how the Broadway original production is very different in music, of like, oh, this song doesn't really fit here, or these lyrics need to change and this needs to be cut. So even in world premiere, like that really is a whole workshop within itself of like, what does it look like actually in production, and where are the kinks to kind of take it out and move it forward for, you know, perpetuity as we get more into the technical side of things and actually trying to produce this. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, what I can say to writers in the process, especially when I've worked with writers, frankly, who have had plays that were workshopped quite a bit, and whether they specifically said this or I just realized when staging their production of their play, they had decided they were done with rewrites. Usually they don't say it, but then when you get to a point where you're sort of, you know, I'm a big believer. I never tell a playwright what to write. I would never. There's no world where that exists in either my approach to directing or dramaturgy. But I will present the challenges, and even things like, you know, what Carley mentioned in Schoolgirls, where there's a significant costume change, and maybe the playwright was astute enough to know, like, I have to write this moment, this scene where it's one character, because 6 characters have to make the one major costume change in the play. My guess is that came up when that play was actually being staged. And when a playwright says, you know, no, a director or dramaturg should never tell you what to write, but the whole point of that staging process and the continual rewriting that happens in that world premiere is so that the play serves the story, and the story is told, and that often does mean doing rewrites. It is a wonderful experience. It is an incredibly challenging experience. And I've also had actors who signed on for world premieres and then like the week before opening are like, I can't take any more rewrites. And you're like, you signed on for a world premiere. You actually, like, it's in the DNA of this work. And it's, look, I hear it, like, it is so stressful. These are actors who were learning monologues the day before they had to do it the first time. That's really challenging, but the ultimate goal is to find the best version of the play or musical for that moment. And you know, this question about, does that happen in the tryout process? This has been going on for decades. It absolutely does. I mean, you can read the stories of every great musical, and there's songs getting written overnight, songs getting cut overnight. And I'll say, you know, to folks like Ben and composers, like, it is, if it's hard to write a scene overnight, it's really hard to write a song overnight. And I find that task daunting. I've found in musical theater workshops, that's often a source of a lot of stress, because it's really hard. So having time is essential. Sometimes it's about making a note and knowing we want to add a song here. We're not going to do it this time. We'll do it in the next process. But the hearing it, the hearing questions from actors. You know, actors are your best friends. They are going to have the most astute, revelatory questions because they're embodying the character. They're most likely to be able to say, you may think you're getting me from here to there, but I can feel that you're not. And being open to that kind of question and feedback is really where you're going to do the best service to your play. Okay, and then we're yeah.
Sorry, we're actually at time for this section, but I know we could have like a whole hour workshop on any of these 4 sections. Honestly, it's a lot to unpack, but thank you, Carley and Shirley. You both shared some really insightful things with us here. I have a couple of questions that I've captured from the chat, and I'm going to continue to be monitoring the chat. Thank you to those of you panelists who've been popping in and answering some of these questions in real time. At the end in the Q&A section, any questions that haven't been responded to, we'll make sure to come back to those. But I'd love to go ahead and transition us now to stay on time with our 3rd section, which is promoting work to theaters for readings, workshops, and full productions, which that's going to answer Emma's question. So I'm going to turn this over to Anna, who will be sharing the space with Shirley.
Hi. So this is actually something that the show that I've written is at the stage where I'm supposed to be submitting it to theaters or festivals and whatnot. And one thing, so I just graduated from musical theater writing school. I have yet to have a world premiere of anything. But at this point, at this stage in your show, what's really important is trying to submit it to theaters that will fit your show. Not every theater is going to fit your show. If you have a very intimate cast, something with maybe four people and like a small pit, few instruments, that will be more appropriate for a smaller theater. While if you have a huge cast, if you try and submit that to a smaller theater, there's a big chance that they're not going to take it, even if you have an incredible show, because a lot goes into whether your show is feasible in the space. Another thing that's really helpful is if you got to look into the types of shows that the theater has done in the past. If you've got a really like intense, mature show, that's probably not going to be great for a theater that does a lot of works for kids. I recently wrote a musical that is about heavily about domestic violence and women's issues, and a great thing to look for in the future would be theaters that have done feminist shows. So yeah, a lot goes into, is this the type of show that this theater tends to pick up?
Yeah, I'll add to that. My favorite example of what Anna is talking about, before coming to Ithaca, I worked for a theater in Washington, D.C. that was called Theater J. It was a Jewish theater for almost 10 years. And I will say, we received, more than a handful of Christmas shows. And it was those moments where for submission. And, I love a good holiday. I love a good Christmas show as much as the next person. But it was just those moments where you realize you haven't read anything about our theater. And that's a really specific example, but there's more nuanced examples as well of saying, look at the past seasons that theaters have produced, to get a sense of the kind of work that fits their mission and also fits their audience. Sorry, I might have an extra visitor for a second. This too, Emma, it's a great question of like, how do you actually get to a stage where a theater is really willing to consider a work? And this question, I always say, build relationships. This is where the take it away, Anna. I'm going to just take one.
Yeah, I was just saying, if you know people who work in theaters, that is a great in. If you've got friends who work in a theater, can put a good word in for you. Theaters receive hundreds of scripts. It is hard to make sure your script is going to be read. So, yeah. When it comes to submitting things, there are a couple of things that are helpful. Not everyone wants to see a score. Not every theater has people on their staff who can read scores. So actually good demos are, at least this is what I was told in some of my classes, good demos are more valuable than the score itself, because people can hear a demo and know if they like a song. Not everybody can look at a score, and honestly, most trained musicians can't just look at a score and know if they're gonna like the song. And a lot, yeah, hire singers, hire good singers, and lightly orchestrate it. Maybe don't fully orchestrate it, because a lot of theaters will hire their own orchestrator, but give people a good idea of what you want it to sound like if it was fully orchestrated. I don't know how many composers are in the audience, but yeah, learning good MIDI orchestration is your friend, because musicians are very expensive, as are singers, and if you only have to pay some of them, that's better for you, because, yeah, this job doesn't actually pay very well.
I'm going to pop in. It looks like there's a second for a pop in here, because there are such great notes here about relationships and accessibilities. And one thing that we might have been thinking about a lot over the past few years is what we mean by accessibility and what we mean by accessibility in art, and how that can help us make these relationships too. So you can also think about, maybe you have friends who would be great for this and they don't live near you. Guess what? Doesn't matter. You can use that. If you're trying to get a theater interested in your work, and there is not currently an open reading period or a grant submission panel or something like that, you can invite people to come see a scaled down cabaret version, selections, perform monologues and scenes from your work. Bring them to you. Right? You can say, this is what it looks like. This is what it sounds like. This is what we could do. Do you want to come see it? I have this free show here. And bring people in. That's a great way to actually promote. You can always stick it in along the side of something else. Are you having a bake sale? Are you having a tag sale? You never know where you can fit the arts, and you never know who's looking for a cheap blender who might want to also finance your play.
And getting your work in front of people is the most important thing you can do, because your show is never done. So many forms of art, like you finish your final draft, you put it out there, it's done. With theater, just the nature of it, it is never done. You can work on it forever. You can have your world premiere, you can have it on Broadway, and it will still face changes in the future, because it's never done evolving. And yeah.
Anna, can you say a word about having been an orchestrator? Just because there's a question about that, and you are so awesome for that.
Oh, working on a new musical, likely theater will be choosing your right. So, composers have final say on orchestrator, but especially on larger shows, commercial shows, composers can say they do not want somebody to orchestrate it. Composers do have a say in that. But oftentimes theaters will have a in-house orchestrator who they know and they trust. And yeah, honestly, a good orchestrator can completely change a show. Personally, I'm not the best just piano writer. Some people are fantastic just building the entire world on just piano. I cling to orchestrations. I mean, being an orchestrator, I love orchestrating my work. But then you can hand that just piano work off to a different orchestrator. They can shape it completely differently. A friend of mine orchestrated one of my songs for my musical, and it completely influenced the way I started orchestrating the rest of it. It can change the feel of the show, add new flavor to the show. It does have a huge impact on the overall process, and having a good relationship with your orchestrator is really important too, just because the back and forth is really important, and you can influence each other.
Are there any other pop-ins from other panelists, or
yeah, I'll just say, this idea of the way to build relationships is to move to a big city. I don't know if you're being serious, Judith, with that question. I actually don't, or that statement. I don't necessarily agree. Certainly, there are connections and relationships that can be established in, if it's New York, Chicago, LA, that can be invaluable to your career and can create relationships, working relationships, artistic relationships that serve you for a lifetime. But I would also say that that can happen in smaller cities, in places like Ithaca, in places like Central New York. I think that I will say the conversation that I'm experiencing as we speak about the future of the American theater is that the hardships that the pandemic has caused will, the expectation is that, and the hope in some ways is that it will lead to a blooming of theater in that's hyper local. So I would say, like, don't discount the benefits that can come from establishing relationships in smaller communities, because those can be just as fruitful, and they can give an opportunity again to develop the work that can then go many other places. One of the plays we produced last year, Queen's Girl in the World, started as a hyper local piece, a DC artist writing about Queens, New York, but that show was developed for 8 to 10 years in the DC area before having a full stage production in DC, and has now had something like 6 to 8 major productions around the country. So it didn't start in New York. It started in a really relationship-based way, and has taken off. And it's a solo show that helps, but it's also a wonderful story that really moves a lot of people. So that's just my input.
Super. Any other panelist pop-ins before we move on to our final category? All right. So this last section we have for this evening is about submitting for publication. And so this is where I'm going to bring in our pre-recorded Saviana Stanescu. So just bear with me a moment as I share my screen, optimize for sound, and we will get you going here. Can everybody see what is on the screen? Maybe just give me a thumbs up if you can see. Wonderful. It looks like this somehow was started in the middle. I don't know how that occurred, but all right, off we go. Welcome, Saviana.
Hi, everyone. I'm Saviana Stanescu. I'm zooming in from Romania. I'm here to visit my family, and I also have a few projects to work on. Thank you for inviting me to speak on this panel. I'm going to speak briefly about the submission for publication. Okay, here is the thing. There are different ways to do that. From my experience, working mostly in New York, where I developed my plays from scratch with the Lark Play Development Center. Oh, so bad that the Lark doesn't exist anymore. It has been such a home for many playwrights to develop new work. I chose this particular background because the play For a Barbarian Woman was developed initially at the Lark in the playwrights workshop. An excerpt of it was directed in a presentation at the Lark by Liesl.
It's frozen for us, Priscilla. It might resume if you turn off your camera and try.
So sorry, everybody. I don't know what happened, but let me try to start that share over again.
I've also got a copy of it if it doesn't work.
There
you go.
think it's working now. Let me just back it up a tiny bit.
Stage reading, you workshop it with actors and the director and maybe a dramaturg. Then you might have a public presentation. You get feedback from the audiences and industry people as well. In this process, different producers and artistic directors and publishers join you at some point to see where your work is at in terms of the development process. If people are interested in the work of a playwright in New York City, they go to some of their readings and public presentations. And in terms of submission for publication, well, the plays that have been licensed for me have Aliens with Extraordinary Skills, White Embers, Ants, were licensed by Samuel French, now called Concord Publishers, and it hasn't happened through submission. Basically, the representatives of Samuel French did come to my readings and productions. And at some point, because, for instance, they did see that Aliens with Extraordinary Skills, produced by Women's Project, was quite successful with the audiences and the critics, they proposed me to be licensed by Samuel French, and they offer me a small advance for publication. So in that case, I didn't submit my plays. It's about inviting people from publishing houses and licensing houses like Concord Theatricals and Broadway Publishing. The former Dramatist Play Service is now incorporated in Broadway Publishing. So you need to invite those people to see your readings and productions. They might not come to all of them, but they might come to one and they might get interested in seeing your work further. That's how it happens, you know. It's a lot about putting your work out there, inviting industry people to see it, getting readings, getting productions, and then people get more and more interested, hopefully, in your work, and more people come to see it. And at some point, one of these licensing organizations propose you to license your play, or maybe more licensing organizations compete for you to license your play. And that's the best way to happen, because obviously they offer you more money if there is interest in your work, there is a buzz, you have an off-Broadway production or a production in a good regional theater like the Hangar or the Kitchen or the Cherry. So all these things happen through networking. People need to see your work. You need to be there to put yourself out there and invite people to see your work. To sum up, there are different ways of getting your plays published. One is to have one of these big licensing companies coming to see your readings and productions and proposing you basically to license your script. Two, publishing houses like No Passport and other smaller publishing houses that get interested in your work. They don't want licensing rights, they don't want exclusivity, but you know, they support you and they put your work out there, and they can publish your work if they are interested in it. Three, in terms of literally submitting work, my experience is only with those anthologies of best short plays or best short monologues in a year. In that case, especially with those published by Applause and Smith and Krause, those edited by Larry Harbinson, yes, Larry did ask for submission. Send me your 10-minute plays, your best 10-minute play that was produced this past year, or your best monologues, and he selects and curates which ones are published in the best of that particular year, published by Smith and Krause or Applause. So in that case, the editor, the curator, selects the plays to be published in that particular anthology. So again, for me, the submission to publication process only happened in terms of anthologies. And I had my play heard, published in Best American Plays of 2012-2013 by Applause, my play Aurolac Blues, published by Smith and Krause, and many monologues published in those anthologies, monologues for women, monologues for men. So I don't know if I'm very helpful in terms of giving you advice for submitting your plays to publication, but this is what happened to me. I really believe that it's important to establish partnerships, to invite people to your readings and productions, to maintain connections with the theater industry, to get your work out there. And hopefully there is a buzz and people get excited and interested, and work with local theaters to develop your work further, try to work with local universities to develop your work further, and hopefully you will see some progress as soon as possible. Good luck in all of your endeavors, and yes, let's put beautiful plays out there. Thank you all. Bye.
All right, thank you, Saviana, from afar in Romania. So we have exactly 10 minutes left. So this officially begins our Q&A portion of the workshop. I'm going to leave just maybe 1 minute. You know what, I'll take the 1 minute now just to say that for all of you that are here, it's a testament to your interest in the development of new works. And maybe you know this, maybe you don't. You have the opportunity before the end of 2022 to experience 5 new musicals in development. Yes, that's correct, 5. The first 2 are a part of the Hangar Flight Test series, which will be taking place as part of their 2022 season in August. Shirley has those dates for us and could pop those in the chat if she desires, or you can also visit the Hangar's website. And Walking on Water will be presenting 3 new musicals as stage readings as well. And that will be a part of our Fall Festival of Stage Readings at the Cherry, November 4th through the 20th. So I hope that you will all come see all 5 of these new musicals, and as audience members getting to experience these new works, some of them for the very first time they've had an audience, your feedback will be critical to the future of these new works in development. All right, so let's begin with some questions here. If you already asked a question and it hasn't been addressed in the chat or by one of our panelists, feel free to pop it in again, and we'll try to keep up with those as we go. And I'll let my panelists pop in as they would like to. First question here that I'm seeing actually is a question for Anna from T. Trotter. What is the title of the DV play and where can someone see it?
If you're talking about the domestic violence heavy musical that I just wrote, it is currently still in the writing more drafts process. I just finished the first draft as my thesis for my musical theater writing graduate degree. I don't know when it will be available to the public, but I am actually, if you go to my website, annamarcushecht.com, there are a few demos from it on there. It's still in development. A lot more edits need to be made before it can be sent to theaters. I was told by a few of my professors the 4th draft is a good time to start sending to theaters for those of you out there. So yes, my show is not quite ready to be seen by the public yet. Oh, no, that's not my website. That's my old website. Here, it's just that one. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Anna. Natasha had a question here. Is the process different for doing 1-acts or 10-minute plays? And do they usually run in theaters with other short works? Anyone want to take that one?
I had the opportunity to work on the 1 Minute Play Festival at the Kitchen in, I think, 2019. So I will say that those sorts of works are definitely put on by theaters, especially within an event like the 1 Minute Play Festival. I think there were something like 30 or 40 1-minute plays that took place in that event. So you should look for opportunities like that, or encourage a theater to create an opportunity like that if there's a local theater that you know would be interested in doing something a little more out of the box, like a 10-minute play festival, or would be interested in filling space in a season with a one act. As far as the process being different, yes, but only in that it is more focused. Typically you'll get a lot less time to put it on, and also you'll need a lot less time to put it on. And also because it will usually be a very condensed show compared to a full-length show or musical, it demands a lot from the playwright and the artistic team in being very focused on what they want to shape. And so you can have a much more focused, truncated process, but it also demands a lot of attention that a longer process for a full-length show might not require.
Great, thank you, Ben. Roger is asking, what are good ways to seek dramaturgical input while working on a script's first draft? That's a great question. Jamie, you want to grab that?
Absolutely. So part of this has to do with, of course, yes, Shirley is correct. Most of the time you do have to pay people. Which I'm not trying to say facetiously, but really, you know, all of us here are interested in the arts, and we don't get, you know, nobody gets a huge amount of money for doing the arts, and that's not true, but whatever. But generally speaking, you can make connections through whether you're advertising locally or not so locally. If you have a local college, of course, here we have Ithaca College, where you might be able to find current students of dramaturgy, for example, whose rates and might be, yes, exactly, whose rates might be good for you, right? And remember that people who are newer to their careers are not necessarily less wise, but they are almost always more up to date. And so taking a chance on somebody newer to their careers is not a bad move there. So making connections either through local theaters, local theater programs and colleges, faculty at local theater programs and colleges, advertising in Facebook groups if you want to do things from afar. And of course, when it comes to compensation, yes, sometimes it's money. Sometimes it's, you know, maybe you are also a photographer and maybe somebody needs new headshots. Maybe you can barter, right? And as Robin has mentioned in other places in the chat here, places like CAP here often are offering specific opportunity grants that can help do that. So your next question is going to be what you might be able to expect from a dramaturg. So it's a great idea to have that conversation and lay out your needs, your desires, and your expectations at the beginning so that you can come to an understanding together about exactly what's reasonable or what's in the wheelhouse of that particular person. Again, if you say, I have this information, but I don't know about this or this or this, after a read through, the dramaturg would be able to tell you what they could do. We haven't spoken about production dramaturg roles quite yet, but something that people who work as dramaturgs are used to doing is putting together a big old packet that is basically multimedia. It has lots of information. It has maybe copies of old newspaper articles. It has photographs, it has sounds. And so looking for that kind of multimedia stuff is really good. Gracie, do you want to add to that?
Oh yeah, sure. I'm a dramaturgy student. So yeah, of course, I'm always looking for opportunities, and I'm about to be production dramaturg on Sweat that we're doing at Ithaca College in the fall by Lynn Nottage. So that'll be fun. And yeah, gotta love the dramaturgy packet. It's always, a fun time to just put your research into, one collective medium. But yeah, no, it's super cool. And I think people are really open to the opinions and the insight of dramaturgs, even though sometimes it seems like dramaturgs don't get enough credit. I think there always is room for them in the rehearsal room or in the development process. And I think they can be a really good resource. So yeah, I've enjoyed hearing everyone's thoughts on that part particularly.
Gracie, if you are currently accepting gigs, why don't you put your email in the chat? And you are so welcome, T. I think that I should get a shirt that says dramaturg, and I would find it hilarious. So thank you for providing me with that joke.
Excellent. Love the little injection of humor there. Well, we have less than a minute here. So unless there are any final questions or questions that did not get addressed, feel free to pop them into the chat here. This is your last chance.
If you want to say, did you want to say that there's another Spring Rights event that you're doing coming up sometime in August? You can tell them about that.
Thank you, Robin. Yes, thank you for that reminder. So WOW will be hosting with CAP one additional workshop, and that is going to be a sneak peek Zoom reading of excerpts from our Fall Festival of Staged Readings. So you can get a little teaser, so to speak, of either one or even a small collection of all three pieces. So that will whet your appetite and hopefully encourage you to come to see the pieces as full staged readings in November.
And right now that's at the springrights.org website as date to be announced. If you're not already on our mailing list, you can do that by going to, I'll put the URLs in the chat again. And by the way, everyone's mailing list, you should be in the Hangar Theater mailing list and WOW's mailing list, and join everybody's mailing list so you don't miss any news. And by joining ours, you'll get the date for the WOW Spring Rights event in August. And what else, everybody?
I just put WOW's website in the chat.
Oh, good.
If anyone needs to grab that. And if you go to our contact page, you should see a link to sign up for our email list. And perfect, Shirley just popped in the hangers as well.
That was Carley, actually. Well done, Carley.
Oh, that was Carley.
Carley's got the speedier fingers. Right.
Perfect, team hanger for the win. Thank you to all of our panelists for being a part of this workshop, and thank you to all of our participants for joining us. This is such a treat, and I hope everybody has a takeaway to take out the door with them this evening. We hope to see you later this summer and fall at some of our new musical events.
Thanks, everyone. And please take advantage of the amazing and talented arts organizations and artists we have in this town. It's not something to take for granted. We live in an amazing place with so much going on. So get out of the house. I have a sign in my bedroom that actually says get out of the house. So thank you everyone for coming tonight, and there will be a tape of this if you'd like to share it with anyone, and have a good evening.
Thanks everybody. Good night.
I just stopped the recording. So